Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us for this conversation. My name is Sarah. I'm a co-founder of a New Delhi-based events organization called Wild City, and I'm also one of the co-founders of a music festival called Magnetic Fields, which takes place in Rajasthan. I'm also one of the regional partners for a project called Border Movement. And Border Movement is a project that launched in 2012 as a collaboration between the Goethe-Institut and a chap called Garrett Schultz, who was an instrumental part in the, I guess you could say, like what Berlin club culture has become today. So he was really inspired by an artist residency that took place in Sri Lanka in 2012 called Sound Camp, which was led by the Gebrüder. And this project subsequently evolved into a regional series of content, events, workshops, residencies, and collaborations that reacted and adapted to the local changing needs over the years. And I'm in conversation today with an artist called Black Box, whose name is Nafis. And we're going to be having a chat today about his project Black Box and also about his most recent performance, which is in 3 parts called Abandoned Ship. And before we jump into the conversation with Nafis, I'd just like to introduce the Black Box a little bit and explain some context behind it, because it's not your average artist project. So after a decade in the field of designing live entertainment projects as a head honcho Dhaka-based entertainment company Live Square, Black Box has allowed Nafis to focus on exploring the realm of new media artist and curator. In 2019, Nafis took a leap to converge his experiences and interests into an artist-curator role. His current practice focuses on the discipline of immersive media using synchronized and interactive storytelling. Nafis looks at developing thematic live audio and visual productions, merging them into a digital mixed media format with elements of art, motion, and lighting technology into a 360-degree space. This started to take shape when he went to Berlin as a Border Movement resident as part of the Goethe-Institut's initiative. So I'd love to, very happy to introduce you to Nafis, and I'd love to just start asking you questions basically. And I'd also like to just say that if you're joining us live as part of this chat, you can also ask questions for Nafis in the comment box, and he will be answering those as we go along. So hi Nafis, welcome.
Hello. Thank you, Sarah. This was a very warm welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'd love to just dive in and just start asking you questions. And
sure.
First of all, it would be great if you could just tell us a bit more about how the Black Box project draws on your different career experiences in the music industry.
Right. So I suppose it's been over 10, 12 years I've been, or more actually, I've been involved in the scene. So I started out as a musician, a failed musician, let's put it that way. And that kind of pushed me towards, looking more at the management space, because that was very exciting, because I think not much was happening in the underground scene, and it was more of a rock-based scene. So that's how Live Square came to be. And it was primarily a concert company. So we were doing concerts and slowly building towards festivals. But eventually we figured out that it was also exciting to work with artists, work with different aspects of it, even down, to merchandise. So different components in the music ecosystem, if you must say. So this was a very holistic experience in some ways. But at the same time, like towards the mid 2015-ish area, like after a lot of these experiments or, diverging into different areas, one thing that really stuck with me was the tech part of it, which was slowly starting to grow. I never took notice of this, to be honest. I've worked with a lot of electronic projects, particularly Border Movement had a residency in 2013, if I'm not wrong, in Dhaka. So I was part of the management part of it, but never really, deep dived into that area until 2015, 16, maybe just started to see what's happening. And around that time, we kind of took a decision to see if LiveSquare could be positioned as a more tech-based event company, very, ahead, kind of a pioneering step. So that's how, I personally got into that. But then again, with LiveSquare and its reputation as an event or music ecosystem company, there were also a lot of things we couldn't do. So it wasn't an artist initiative, it became a service project. So service projects are usually, they have their limitations and it's based on clients, and you come from the experience of working with events. So, a lot of the times it's also based, some of the influences are from the external bodies. So that's something that kind of deterred me to work at original projects, if I may say. So that kind of led me towards in around 2018-ish when I kind of got away from that industry and kind of moved into slowly just starting out Ableton, very new, no idea what's happening, and then one by one just getting sucked into it, for the lack of a better word. And that was such a happy accident. I don't know, maybe, but whatever it was just so rewarding. It's so rewarding every day, and I just love being immersed in this. So yeah, that's how I think it ties in.
So how did you go from a failed musician to kind of working behind the scenes in the industry, and then you kind of fell back in love with creating music again, and you weren't just creating music, you were kind of you were creating this kind of whole universe around the music as well. And would you say that happened before you went to Berlin as part of your border movement residency, or did that kind of really come to life there? And can you tell us a little bit more about how your time in Berlin has kind of influenced and shaped this project?
Oh, absolutely. I'm getting goosebumps. So I'll just go back a little, because during our course of working with the industry, LiveSquare kind of popped up quite a bit in the news or media, or the audience also, because we try to differentiate, and it's not always with technology. Sometimes we didn't have technology, sometimes we didn't have the budget to afford technology, but however we tried to make things new. We saw it from an experiential point of view. That was at least my take on how I tried to make LiveSquare. The experience is paramount. So to create an experience of that level, at this day and age, technology plays a big part of it as well. So sitting here in Dhaka, when I was here, it was more about whatever we had access through YouTube and from what we see online on the social media. But when I had a 2-month visit to Berlin, this residency program, it was not like before. I've been there before, or to other cities, and it was inspiring, but this was immersive, and this was designed around me. So that was really cool of Garriott and David and you to kind of help mold it to my ideas. And I've been to so many exciting experiences, because Berlin is kind of that kind of a city where there's nothing is not allowed. So that kind of means you can go anywhere. And
what were like such like maybe your top 3, like if you had to choose, like your top 3 kind of like experiences or things that you like went to see or do, or that really kind of stick out in your mind?
I think like the first one would be just after a week of going, there was this deep web event which was a light, and it was a light show, lights and lasers, and I can't really explain it. You had to be there, kind of a thing. It happened at Kraftwerk, so it had this, like, the space itself is something to see, this derelict, rundown space, and then they have these like hundreds of lights that are coming down, and then lasers interacting with the lights, and the music was also kind of like it's an I would say ambisonic kind of, so it's a 3D sound. So it's what really immersion really felt like, which I could never experience here, and that's something that opened up like possibilities, like what's happening here. And turns out that the guys who were doing this, Christopher Broder, then Robert Henke, So they're like the co-founders of Ableton and then touch designer guys.
Oh,
So,
wow.
so they know this tech inside out and they're bridging it with art. And I'm like, this is where it's going. And it really went with what I kind of really got excited about. So I think that plus many of these, little experiences here and there, where it's super organic in many ways, but also digital. So this contradiction is something that I really personally enjoy in my work as well. So that overall experience, I would say that it really came to be. And I also played in West Germany, this venue. So all the artists there, they were also super analog, doing analog digital stuff. Like, so those kind of things, those are, you don't see every day, at least where I'm from. So that was really, really inspiring, all of it. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I think it's time to start talking about abandoned ship because I mean, I can, from what you're saying, it really all kind of really culminates in that project. And it's 3 parts, and you can actually watch it now on Facebook. I think you're going to drop the links to those in the comments section so people can check them out. But first of all, can you just tell us a bit more about the concept of abandoned ship and like what were the thoughts and kind of the inspirations that went behind this as a 3-part performance?
Initially, when this was being formulated, I've been trying to do this with the Goethe, and it was supposed to happen at the venue itself. They have a venue. So the idea was to create an empty space and do a show over there. And it was about that, like a no man show kind of a thing. So it's I want to do a live version of this when I can, wherever I can rather. But during Corona, that didn't happen. So I have the studio where I figured, okay, it's a minimalist setup, but let's at least try to do what's there. So that's on the technical side of things. But from a conceptual level, this also is quite personal in a sense that it's based on a lot of these. Like when I was mentioning 2018, it had a lot of personal repercussions from my personal life. So about abandoning a lot of these ships that are there in your life, like partnerships, ownerships, friendships, and a lot of these things felt wrong in some ways, or that a lot of things holding me back, a lot of things which are like you have to answer to the society. So all these ships that were there, that's something I wanted to kind of abandon. So in a very simple linguistic way to put it, it's just abandoning all these ships. And there are these 900 kinds of ships that are out there apparently. And when I kind of broke this down into a 3-act play rather, so that's also a kind of way I try to see it. It has to have a beginning, middle, and end, not necessarily in that order. So that's kind of how I wanted to approach it. And 3 parts are very different in a sense that the first one it's called Regenschein, which is rainshine for German, and it's this other way of looking at summer's rain. So it's the contrast. It's a more melancholic way of looking at it, and then. But it's also it's a beauty in itself. So also the music I think it's a bit slightly upbeat kind of a sound, and then it kind of slowly transitions into this voice which is not very audible in a way. So that's about voices in your head, and there's some lyrical element to it. It's kind of like looking for an escape, and eventually it lands on this final part, which is being unapologetic. And if you look at the musical form of it, it kind of breaks down absolutely and goes down into something as if someone's learning to, it's kind of a rebirth kind of a thing. And eventually what that is imperfection, and that's okay. So I think it kind of summarizes a lot of where I am at this stage in my life also, that whatever is there is not perfect, and I know it, but it's a start in some ways. If I keep doing this for 10 years, I might go somewhere. And even if not, I'm happy with what's happening. I'm enjoying the journey more than the destination. So I suppose, that abandoned ship is kind of that transition from, being a head honcho was kind of an intentional use of the word, because it sounds like a big thing. And I felt that. I felt a lot of success, a lot of things, but happiness is something I probably did enjoy it at some point, but I kind of wanted to transition into this. So it's a very personal side of it.
You also, I mean, just visually, you also don't really seem to be present within the actual performance. You almost seem like a phantom within your own piece, like you're kind of there, not there. It's really interesting. You're kind of like, you know, you have that. It's very like, and I couldn't figure out, you know, whether you're on like, are you on in a spaceship? Are you in like a submarine? Because you have this like this constant like movement that you create through the moving of the camera creates this like huge sense of like distortion and confusion, and you're never really
Yeah.
sure what's happening. So it's really really interesting. Like if you have everyone watching, if you haven't seen it, please take a look. And you know, it's incredible the way that you have. I just want to very quickly talk about exactly how not how you've used the mixed media, because we're going to talk about that next, but just like a little bit of advice about you know, any other artists who might be thinking about incorporating mixed media into digital performances like this. You know, like what kind of like advice would you give? Would you think of, you know, because this is very concept led, so like it seems to be more concept led, maybe more than kind of like media led. So it'd be really interesting to hear your advice about that for anyone that's watching.
Right. No, thanks for saying all this. I mean, I've tried to approach it while that was more of the conceptual thing. When you kind of, so you got to wear different hats, I suppose. So when you're thinking from that conceptual level and you bring it down to a performance or a mixed media, particularly like with music or a single media like visual art or media like music, it kind of really the energy is translated through the music itself, and people are open to you know, their own perception of that. So with mixed media, I think like to summarize in one sentence, you have to start listening to the lights and hearing like, you know, seeing the music. So let's put it that way: listening to the lights,
Okay,
listening, you know, hearing the yeah, sorry,
that makes
again,
sense in it. That makes sense even though it doesn't make sense. I don't
yeah, I
know.
mean, you have to see lights, see the music, hear the lights. If I so you have to kind of break out of that idea that it's, you can express it with only one tool, and one tool will dominate constantly. So even if you're a musician or a producer, you see you've got like 4 instruments or 5 instruments that you select, and sometimes you kind of have to bring one up and then take that one down. So it's a mix of that, but with different media here. So you've got to be, you know, you've got to play along, and they have to sit well as well. So it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, and but you have to have insane passion for it to also kind
So
of really dig in to that.
so this kind of takes us very nicely into having a like look at a technical overview of the abandoned ship project. And what would be fantastic is if you can kind of take us through a step-by-step breakdown of the different media components that are at play in this whole performance. And then if you can just talk about how you then combined these elements, that would be great.
Okay, thank you. That sounds good. What I'll do, let me just share my screen in that case. Oh, can you? I think you need to help me share my screen. Make me host or share screen. Yeah.
What do I have to do?
Am I frozen?
Okay, so you should be able to do that now. You should be able to share your screen. Thanks for bearing with us, everyone.
Okay. I'm not sure if you can see. You can see everything. Can you?
Yes, I can.
Okay. All right. So first thing first, my Ableton froze, so you have to bear with this, but I'll try to explain what's going on over here. So while I mean, I can't show you the session view, but of course, like when you start drafting out ideas, it goes with how you do it is you usually kind of do session view. So you start out with like 1, 2, 3, 4 columns, or and then start with a beat, or you've got got one idea and then you build onto that. So I think that's very standard for most artists. So once I had those kind of ideas laid out, so I actually had like the first track. If you look at this part, can you see my mouse?
Yes, I
Like
can
this,
see it
yeah.
moving. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So this part is the first track, I'd say. And this actually, this is all I had, like this part, just 3 layers and everything. And then once it started to flesh out, I kind of added more to it, and then had like more fillers and added in the drums. And then once I had like a structure, I added in an intro, and of course eventually an outro. So what's interesting is that because you see it in 3 parts, but it's actually built as one single project. So this is one single project file, and here you'll kind of see that this part is where it starts. So the beats, like it was a 7/4 measure, and then it was 3/4 and 4/4. So different measures, and those things are also at play. So the first track ends here. The second one it begins here, but bits of it stay, and we move into the next one. So kind of a standard process of making sure that you slowly kind of drift into this. And again, you kind of there's a key change. There's a lot of these changes, and you have to kind of make sure that it sounds like it's not a separate thing. So because it was designed as a live performance or a one-piece item, so it had to make sure that it doesn't feel like, oh, it's a new track, and that wasn't the idea. Like, you wanted to show the transition. So this is where the conceptual bit also kind of is always at the back of your head, that you're not missing that out. So once we're kind of we've done this one, and this is a basic songwriting process. You come and go, but you'll see that over here, even though this is track 2, this should be ideally track 2. There's elements of track 1. I still brought those in. So elements of the guitar you'll probably see across the set in the first track, second, and the third one. So that there's this connect, even though like it's detuned or in some way or the other very. So there's a presence of that, or like the piano from like the third track. There's a presence of that in track 1. So when you're doing like a full set, you kind of see all of these coming together. So that's like overall the sound bit of it. I can't scroll down because it froze again, but here's also the lighting rig I've kind of designed, and the light kind of goes in as both, kind of designed, like in a way programmed, but there's also an element where the light kicks in as a, I'd say more like a audio reactive element. So in some parts of the song, it's actually just audio reactive. So it's reacting to the kick or the snare. So it's and the way I've designed an FX rack. So in some parts of the track, there's live effects triggering. So when it's there, the light actually starts to react to the like the audio itself. So again, if I may just show it. I don't know if you can see my screen. Do you see you see the screen, but not the person, like, right? Not me.
I know, I can just see the same screen at the moment.
Okay, that's changed. Fine. All right, okay, that's okay. So with push, I kind of trigger all these things, and the light kind of reacts to that. So this is the most that happens at Ableton. So my timeline was 4 weeks. I extended that to 5 or more, I guess. But within 4 weeks, I had to do the sound, the video, everything together. So that was like something I had in my head. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to do it. So I had to finish all these things like within 1.5 weeks or so. Once I had a basic structure, I did a lot of, you'll see from this, there's a thing called TD Ableton. So in TD Ableton, that takes me to Touch Designer, which is more like the visual, as well as it does so many things. You can literally connect anything to anything. So that
what's an example of connecting anything to anything?
So I'll show that at the end of this, because
okay, cool.
but just to give you an idea, for example, with this joystick, I'm holding this joystick, and I'll show it. I could control the lights with that. So it's a lot of fun. You can like, if you're a gamer, it's a lot of fun. You could do lights with your hand, and this entire performance, like there's a disclaimer at the beginning that all of it is done live. It actually means that the whole show, even the final editing, the visuals you see, the effects you see, is actually done by the joystick. So I'll show it to you how it's done. But that's done by Touch Designer, because if we zoom into one of these elements, like the way it happens is that it takes information, song information from Ableton, as you can see, Ableton song, and then it sorts out some data, and then it uses like some of the elements from that, and then takes that into a second computer, so that computer also drives it on the big screen that you see in the video. There's a screen in my room, so so it's like multiple computers are talking to each other. So it's all data now. So it's shooting up one data, and that's being transferred into an effect, probably in real time. And then I have Kinect, for example. So with Kinect, I can actually use my hands and gestures to control elements of the sound. So that's also there in the video. I'll come to that. But if you can see the screen, so once this data is taken in, I can't play this because my computer is going to crash right now. But it takes you to like different texture formats and different visual components. So you can see like all that coming in, and different objects are here. Like there's so many things. It's hard to explain in these couple of minutes. It would take hours, I suppose. But it kind of is. This is not even the main part. This is the before filming. So this is the filming part of it. So there's two versions of this I had to do. So it's 2 layers of live recording. So the first one actually just gave me like the signals to go into that computer. And once I did that, once I had all this ready, I put in this camera, which is like a 360 camera, and this camera kind of gave me so when you see like the visual, it seems like a spaceship, or it's moving around. So that's actually done using a 360 camera. Any standard 360 camera would do. So I recorded that performance in 360 camera, and then took it then brought it back again into the editing software. So this is the part I'll show you now. I hope I'm not running over time with this. So
no, you've got a few more minutes left. We're good.
Okay. So when I had that, I brought in those 3 elements. I need to see where it's like so big, these networks. I'm not too organized, as you can see by now. So when I had like 3 recordings of this, like the 360 recording, and one from the back corner of the room, like this more static picture that also appears time to time. So when all that came in, I put them into a second file, which is this one. And here, it takes it takes the cue and the markers from Ableton, and then drives, shifts between creating live effects. So that's the effect that you see. And if you see like this, for example, this thing, this is like a cube map, which kind of creates that 360-ish element. So I keep switching between the structures and everything, so that eventually what happens is that it pipes out more like different effects on the same project, like on the same project file. So so what it does is, like the 20-minute set, I had to record them all like at one go, and I used the joystick to kind of do that. I could just shift back to stop sharing the screen, so I could kind of visibly explain what that means.
Yeah, if you could, you've got a few minutes left. So if you've got any more of your like live elements that you just want to run through quickly before we go into the next question, it'd be great to kind of see that.
Okay, so sorry, I guess I'm just I'm moving back and forth. Yeah, I would say that this part of it is a bit tricky, in a sense that you have to design your camera with the whole space in mind. So that kind of gives you a lot of like there's advantages to that, but also disadvantages. So you have to really program the camera. So what you see across the room, like it zooms up and then goes down, all these things, it's actually based on like how I move the camera, and this is what I use it for. So I could use different ways to kind of move the camera, but I could program it, I could automate it, but this is the live part. So for me, this is like playing the guitar itself, like, because it's a second layer of performance. So the first one is performing the music and making sure the music goes fine, the video goes fine, and then editing all the effects and everything. So that's a whole separate project in itself. So it's two lives. It's a live square in a way. So I can show you with this, like an example. I think that'll be easier for someone. Can you see this part, the screen, my mouse and everything?
Yes, I can see that.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So now I'm shifting to what's this, like my phone. So from this, if I could just go into, like, this is our conversation, and this is the second screen I was talking about, and this is the bigger screen. So there's a lot of things happening, and all wirelessly, 3 computers. There's a lot of, these small things, and they need to talk to each other. And we've got like the lights and audio interfaces over there. So you have to be very connected in a way, and each of these things add up to latency and everything. So it needs to be kind of done critically. So how I'm doing this, for example, for this podcast, I designed this session. So right now you see like a lot of like my room has these lights, so I can just use this to turn, like, for example, I programmed this to red lights. So, just a very simple thing. This can control lights. So I could also do like a strobe effect, like this kind of an effect. I don't know if it's being seen, but
yeah, I can see that.
And then I stop it. So.
And remember, if anyone's got any specific questions about this setup for Nafis, please ask questions in the comments below. And I'd just like to find out very quickly, through this process, what would you say your main takeaways have been in terms of like your main learnings? And I guess, it's always interesting to know what your main kind of your biggest failures maybe were, or the things that you maybe thought you could do, which you couldn't end up doing.
So many, Sarah. I mean, I'm 50% happy with what happened. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm not happy, but that was also kind of the limit. Like if I could stretch it to 6 months, I'd probably reach 70%. So it's better to, have, get what you can. So my idea from this was to make sure that, because with the deadline, I learned a lot of things, and I think that's very precious for me. I took a lot of help from a lot of these communities. So one of the things, even though I wouldn't say it's a failure, I was failing at a lot of points. Some of these I could solve through these forums, like these online forums. So they helped me a lot. But at the same time, I think, for example, the laser that I have just stopped working on time. And then the frame rate that's very important for these projects, like to have a 60 frames per second, I was not being able to hit that. So when I was doing the second leg of the editing, like the FX, I was doing it at a slightly lesser rate. So at times there were stutters. So I had to work with, so what you see in real time happening, all of that, it's not actually happening. Sometimes it's, it's lagging, and then I had to adjust my pace to it. So there's a lot of live elements and hiccups that you have to kind of work with. And yeah, I suppose, for example, Ableton right now isn't working. It's just, with technology, I think that's there until we reach a point where this won't be an issue. Your bottleneck will not be your GPU or CPU. So I think every time this optimization really, it's something you have to balance out, and that I think was a big challenge for me.
So then maybe, so you'd basically, I think we've still got screen share going on, which looks great. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So, I guess then one of the biggest takeaways is maybe just anticipating things to go wrong and building that into part of your like actual
Oh,
aesthetic, rather than trying to kind of have this idea of perfection, because your idea of perfection is never really you're never going to be able to kind of achieve that. So and I guess that's you could say that for all creative processes, really. You know, I don't know many people who
yeah.
are ever 100% happy with what they finally put out.
Oh, yeah,
um
of course.
but
Totally. Yeah.
I'd love to, so you talked about how this was initially planned as a live show. So and then you know, very amazingly kind of reworked this as a digital performance. But I'd love to find out a little bit more about what we can expect from future performances, whether they're online or on ground, and what, you know, what you're planning to do with this project.
Right. So this is like the very first iteration, I would say, and a key part of this is that I could have turned this into like most hits are made, is that you collaborate with the best people. So and I, working in this scene, I know all the best people who are out there, and I'll be blatant and honest about this. There's like, the music is bad. It's not good enough. I mean, for like a professional recording to go on the radio, this is not good enough. And if I put in time, it's gonna get better. But and I could have gone to like a professional sound person, like a sound designer or a visual artist. But again, I'm in this for the long haul. I want to learn. So learning is also part of this journey. So like when I started out 2 years ago, I couldn't even design a sound. Like I couldn't mix 2 or 3 layers, and now at least I could do a couple of layers. So I think the process itself was very rewarding in that way. Sorry, am I losing track of the question? Sorry.
Uh, no, that, you know, this is actually really interesting to hear you talk about why, you know, I think we can bring in another question here, which is why, which
Yeah.
is quite interesting, which is why, you know, because this seems like has such potential for it to be a wider collaborative project. So why did you
Right.
do this completely
Right.
independently,
So it
other
ties
than
in with
obviously
the
wanting to learn a bit everything? Yeah.
it ties in with the thematic aspect of it, because I wanted to abandon help as well, in a way. When you abandon ship, you abandon help as well in some ways. So uh, it's a personal, it's a lot of these things, and I wanted to break free. So that, in that way, I think the way it ties in that part uh, is the fact that, you know, with again, I'm thinking so many things, I'm kind of losing track of it. But
It's all good.
with all this technology at hand, I wanted to explore it myself, to be honest. So
Hmm.
it's not like I couldn't reach out to someone. I wanted to do it myself, and this is like the first iteration, like we were discussing, that this uh, for the next year or two, I don't have a timeline for this. I'll pursue this as long as it makes sense for me, or makes sense for the greater purpose. So for the next some next amount of time, let's say a year or 2 or 3, this will remain more of a personal project and not be collaborative at this stage, to be honest.
Mm.
And eventually, as it grows, it will bring in this sense of interactivity rather than collaboration. So when I say interactivity, it means there's a lot more audience participation, a lot more, because that's how I designed shows and my live events back in the day. So I want to bring in that perspective of creating a platform like idea. So right now it's a very one person thing, and eventually it'll be a participatory project. And maybe in the third round, which is like the final round, or as per how I see it, would be all interactive, because that's where technology is going, that's where everything is going. So the creator and the created, or the creation, might just become one. So that's a
So,
very broad way of looking at it, but it's still somewhere out there. Somebody's probably also thinking about this, but this is like the starting point. So, and I wanted to be completely in control of the starting point, compared to a management role where I was barely in touch with any of these. And for my bottleneck was technology. I had to rely on other people for this and that, and whatever they said, I had to buy into that. And sometimes that was good, sometimes that wasn't. And that kind of led me to kind of a bit of frustration, also kind of led me to try it out myself. So I guess it's a mix of all these things that led to this point. Yeah.
And
I
then
hope that answers.
it does, and then some, but obviously I still have some more questions because
Please, yes.
because so you talk about like the end goal with this project for it to be kind of a mixture of the person creating the content to be kind of interacting directly with the people consuming the content, so it almost sounds like a bit of a game, or in some kind of avatar of that. And so what's the next step then, like, do you think, with this project, and what can we expect to see next from you, in terms of output, or what are you, or maybe that's a difficult question for you to answer, what bits are you working on at the moment?
Okay, so to get to the first point of it is, to create this interactivity or gamification, the way we kind of say it, because I also worked with the app industry, music app industry for some time, and there's the sense of gamification that's really big in the tech world. So I kind of dig that personally as well. So I want to bring in, like, with this, of course, there is a bit of gamification, but in general, like, the idea of gamification makes it exciting for the audience, because like in the 80s or 90s, I think it was very passive, like a performer doing something on stage and you as an audience are consuming it. So that's kind of changing, and that's where Berlin kind of brought that out so well, and a couple of other European cities. It's a very European thing, I'd say. In the UK, in maybe Oslo, Amsterdam, this is happening, like, where many projects are interactive, and the idea of installations is very, very few over in this part of the world. I'd say it's still not as big. So installations have been interactive for some time now, and kind of bridging the element of installations at the same time music and art and visual art. So all these kind of are coming together. So that's where I think this interactivity is so important. So that's like the first step of it. And the second question would be, how would I kind of see it, like the current project? So the next project I'm working on is with transforming narratives, and that's is mainly, that's more of a visual, or how I'd say more of a conceptual project, in a sense that it's fully digital. It doesn't have the live elements in it, so makes my life easy in some ways. It's at least one step less, but I still want to keep that element of having a baseline programming that I want to do, but on top of that keep it kind of generative. That's kind of big right now, but also at the same time live, be it playing a live instrument like push or a guitar or just this. So this element of live, like mixing up with the programming, so that kind of keeps it fresh. So if you ask me to recreate this exact project the next time, the video will look completely different, because I did it right at the spur of the moment. So each of these would be exciting. If somebody's excited about this or the process, they'd find 3, 4, 5 renditions of the same thing. Every time I do it, it's going to be different. So I think that's I don't know if that answers the question, but that adds to it in a sense that every product or production is new or different, even if it's the same base of it.
No, I think it's really interesting the way that you're approaching this, and I think it's I think it'll be really refreshing as well for like younger artists to kind of to have this much wider vision of what each performance or output could be, and I think it's great. There's something really I think that inspires a lot of confidence, of this idea of like embracing error and mistakes and making that part of your like creative process and journey, because I think everyone, for very many different reasons, is always so like terrified of things going wrong and things not being right. So now that we are coming to the end of our conversation, but I have still have got a lot of questions for you.
Oh,
So what I
okay. All
thought we
right.
could do is maybe try and do these quite quickly. So
Okay. Yeah.
almost like a rapid fire round. So
All right.
um,
Okay.
so the first one is,
Mhm.
was there a specific moment or a specific point of inspiration or reflection that you can think about that really kind of changed your creative trajectory and kind of put you on this path? Like, was there like a key influence that you can share with us?
Yeah, usually it's very inspiring, like the good things. People talk about good things, but I think sometimes a sense of frustration and loss can also be inspiring, and that's not always a bad thing. Like by I think 2017, end of that time, so there was an moment when I was feeling so disconnected from Life Square, which is like a baby for me, but I felt so distant from it that what how far have we come along, and then personal relationships and everything. I think all that combined had an influence on me to kind of take up on this, and I think that also that frustration of having all this technology at hand and not being able to even fulfill like 2% of it, and kind of also working in the service industry, like for apart from like this one festival we did, which was Rock Nation, which that's where we had a lot of agency and say in it. But apart from that, it was a lot of it was client centric and kind of serving the industry. So I suppose a lot of it is based on their needs and their framework, and sometimes it's just limiting, not always but many a times. And I'm using that, didn't want to do it anymore. After 10 years, I'm like, okay, uh, I think in this industry, I've done, like, everything else would be a linear growth. It's not going to
Mm.
be a shift. I wanted a shift, like a radical shift, maybe similar to this industry. And I figured that, okay, this is where I think I have interest. I'm not good at it, but okay, let's give it a shot. I mean, if I'm passionate about it, I could give it a shot. And I think that's where it's a
So
mix
it
of
was
things.
it was a desire to do something completely different from what you were doing that really kind of inspired you to kind of take the leap back into exploring like the creative side of yourself. Okay,
Right,
interesting.
because I was
Something
doing
like
it
that?
vicariously through my
Yeah.
projects, and now I wanted to be a first person in this project, and if I yeah, to put it that
Yeah.
way. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. And were there, this is a classic, but always has interesting answers. Were there times when you felt like giving up and what kept you going?
War. I felt like giving up today or every 3 days. With the way it works is, it's not always going to be ups. I mean, when people usually start out, they think that every day is going to be bright, and they just see this like the final picture of it. And like, if you just look at like the first line when of the first song that I did, there's this little voice excerpt which I do, which is based on that kind of an idea, that we think that it's going to be bright and sunny, but it's not always the same, and you have to embrace that low point. And I've had many highs and many lows. I think with time, I think that you get that in life, and you start to embrace that low is okay. You kind of need some
Mm,
downtime, and that also works as an inspiration, not active inspiration, but maybe a bad event helps you write a song. Every poet needs a pain. So you need to embrace the low points, the high points, and I suppose some of them would be when, even in context to this project, let's say I was supposed to do this. I gave myself a deadline of 4 weeks, but I needed more time because 1 week I did nothing, just nothing,
mm,
and because I just got to the computer, and I'm like, it's not worth it. I watched Netflix and all that because I was just not inspired enough to do it. And then, like, 7 days later, in one day, I did 7 days work, in a way. So it's
mm.
these sharp rises, and it might not be the same for everyone. Some people are so consistent. I'm jealous. Like, they can do this like a routine, and yeah, it's not for me, I suppose.
I don't think so. I mean, I think it sounds like you're very kind of conscious about and mindful about, when you're having good days and bad days. And I think you know, being realistic about what you can achieve on a day when you're not feeling great is much better than kind of trying to work yourself into the bone and really like making yourself feel even worse. I think,
Yeah.
you know, all of us, especially, you know, since you know, since March and the lockdowns happened, we've all got to be like a lot more mindful about how we're feeling on a day-to-day basis, because it is a very challenging time.
Yeah.
So it sounds, you know, it sounds like you've had like quite a healthy approach to kind of, you know, your ups and downs, and that, you know, you've kind of been realistic about that, and it's helped you to kind of keep going. So what advice would you give to artists who are starting out, and maybe starting out with mixed media projects, like, well, not like this, but, you know, similar to this?
Yeah, I think the main point is that it's unlike like the olden times, let's say. It's all out there, to be honest. Like like before I tried looking into this myself, I had some time. I was blessed to have that. I had some access. So if I think internet is there for everyone, YouTube's there for everyone. So it's about the kind of content you consume. If you can set aside some time for yourself and just start digging into how to create a song in Ableton. There's millions of these videos, and just watch like 3 or 5 of them, pick up some of these ideas and start doing that. How to do touch, how to make a video on Touch Designer. Hundreds of lessons are out there. Not, and these are free, which would in the times before would be, you know, the resources that were kept enclosed. Right now it's out there. So I mean, if you have passion, if you really want to do it, there shouldn't be an excuse. I'm not saying that that's the ultimate resource, but it's a starting point, because then
I mean,
you can,
maybe what you could do, because I mean, sometimes people feel really overwhelmed with the amount of content and resources that are actually available, because there are so many. So maybe what you could do is like pop your top 3 into the comments section, or maybe things
for
like
sure.
that you found really
So they have
helpful,
a starting
because
point.
you know, like sometimes it's just like giving, you know, just being given like a bit of a direction in which to go in, because there is so much content out there.
Oh, for sure.
And we've talked a lot about how you've basically used this idea of imperfection and made it kind of quite a prominent part of your performance output. So how did you get to that point? Like, why did you like, you know, how did you get to that point where you were like, actually, I want to embrace the imperfection within my creativity?
So it's a couple of things. Like if like we were referring to a hit song, for example, if you really put in all resources, you can turn any song into a Billboard top charter if you really put everything into it. So you get the best producers, best voice artists, best this, best that, all the best of the people in the industry, but you know, a lot of money, and you can take it there. So perfection is actually subjective in a sense, and you can turn anything into perfection in some ways. And with the technology available right now, if you look at some of these YouTube videos on how to make, you know, the perfect sound, perfect light, or perfect this, perfect that, it's very much doable, and it kind of takes away the human touch out of it. So for example, to achieve what we kind of achieved with using this project, or any project right now, previously we needed like this would be a 10 people full-time job, what I probably just did as a single person, because of all the equipment available and technology available. So this using to like kind of moving away from the perfection is kind of being human in that way. It's kind of dichotomous in a sense, if you look at it, that we're using all this technology, but in a way we kind of try to be human. So, and that's what, you know, a lot of these Ableton tutorials talk about, to humanize a lot of these projects. Like you can just put in hi-hats at every 4, like the perfection, but you add in a little groove to make it like a little more exciting for the audience. So, you know, it's that philosophy across the board. So and it lets you be humble at the same time. I think that's a more of a personal thing. Like it gives you room to grow. Like if you realize this is perfect, you'll never grow. And this has happened to so many people, even myself, in where in my previous industry, because again, I was stuck in that linear line and I couldn't grow anymore in some ways. So this allows you room to grow, to embrace the imperfection, and I'm happy to be part of it.
Amazing. And I guess it's kind of similar to why the sense of imperfection. Another why do everything live, like, or why not like make parts of it live? Why do the whole thing live all the time?
I think one thing is inherent from me, like from childhood. I was very fascinated about live things, like people doing things in real time. So a live bootleg video of some concert or anything like that part was really exciting. We had very little media access, at least myself, I did. So anything like a Michael Jackson show, like when he did a showmanship kind of a thing at a Super Bowl. So when you see what he did, it was with that technology, it was like, wow, it's like, it's next to magic. I think there's this quote, which is like any technology which is sufficiently advanced enough is like magic. So now the technology exists to do things in real time, which is live. So that live bit in me, or working in the live scene for so long, I want to keep that freshness. And the fact that, you know, it's I think it's a more personal choice that even myself, I can't replicate what's out there, because if I did this on After Effects or Premiere Pro, I could just render it again, one button, send it out, it'd be the same thing. So I think this is more for me than for the audience, that, you know, I wouldn't be able to create this myself again. So that kind of is also exciting for me, to keep that element live. And it's also, you know, it's a performative approach rather than, you know, sitting in front and just clicking a button. So you're constantly, and sometimes it's a lot of work then. And sorry, I just have to add this bit, that since I work with a lot of traditional musicians or acoustic musicians, it's I see this disparity that, you know, electronic is bad and traditional is good. So there's always this debate or rivalry. But through this process, I realized that electronic music has a lot of nuances, and if you really dig in deep into electronics and data, it's a wide world. It's not just pushing buttons. I mean, of course, you could just push play and all of it could just happen. But if you really want to do it, it could be as immersive or as difficult as playing an instrument or learning an instrument. So I'd say that to have an open mind. So I guess it's a mix of all that. Yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Navis. It's been absolutely fantastic speaking to you. Thank you everyone for joining us. And I'd also like to thank Goethe-Institut Bangladesh for facilitating this conversation. And yeah, thank you so much, Navis. It's been a real pleasure chatting to you.
It was so good to share all this, because I think for the last 2 years, I haven't been able to share all this. I mean, I've been doing this in this, you know, like man cave kind of a situation, but now it's good to take it out there. I'm also confident that even though I'm kind of a beginner, I'd say, or an advanced beginner at best, but it's good to take it out there. And thank you so much for inviting for this conversation. And thanks to Border Movement for, you know, kind of inspiring that project, you know, kind of the seed in me, and Wild City, of course, as a partner. So I think it's, you know, all these good people coming together that really helped me take that leap, because you need a lot of inspiration to go there. So the Goethe-Institut and all of you, I think that's a big part of what has happened, even though not to the highest extent I expected, but it's a good start, I'd say. So thank you so much for inviting to do all this. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. It's been a real pleasure. And thanks everyone for watching, and over and out from us.
Cheers.